Good morning, everyone. Glad you're with us again today for another iT2 podcast, digital transformations and all things SAP. I'm extremely excited this morning. I have a special guest with me today, Jeff Ward. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
Well, we're so excited because Jeff has such an incredible background in SAP and specifically S4. So, Jeff, if you would, tell us a little bit about you and what your background is, please.
All right. So I guess, starting my SAP background, I was working on the hardware side of things back in the mid-90s in the original R3 explosion. So I came from things from the hardware side, and then in 2000 went to work for SAP. And I was at SAP for about 17 years and a variety of senior executive positions, usually in the product development group. And like I tell people, I kind of still have some survivor's guilt. I'm one of the people that kind of came up with this idea to transition everybody to a new database and a new architecture application back in the 2000s, and it's finally here for a lot of companies. So it's kind of interesting to see that full cycle journal from something on the whiteboard to thousands and thousands of companies using it in real life.
It sure is. Well, it is amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the journey to S4 and what it's like, because you're quite humble in everything that you just said. I know your experience with SAP S4 goes far more in depth than what you just said, but you do have significant experience with it. And so speak a little bit about what's it like, what's the journey like for a customer going to S4?
All right, well, that's a good question because there's only a couple of general options for companies to move. But I want to kind of step back and talk about why this whole thing started. Why did SAP need companies to go to this new thing? And kind of that puts in context where we're at in the migration path is. Basically, when SAP came up with this idea for a new simplified, wall-to-wall ERP system that is now S4 in the cloud, the idea was pretty revolutionary. There was only Salesforce was kind of just the only thing out there at that point. And so what SAP was really trying to figure out was how to get out of the code mess that had been created by SAP and SAP's partners and SAP's customers of all of this custom code that had eventually gotten to the point of unmanageability. You'd reached a point of entropy in the inside the guts of the system where it was just impossible to really do very much in the system anymore without a radical rethink and a radical reshaping of the guts underneath it all. So that's really, in essence, what SAP was trying to achieve with S4 was that, and you hear that clean core, the simplification guides and the simplification methodology that everybody's done. That was really the driving force, was cleaning up the code mess so that companies could have a clean platform for the next 30 years of innovation for their companies. Along with that, though, it provided a lot of new opportunities, especially in the analytics and the UI with Fiori, all the HANA database capabilities that are in there. Now SAP's adding AI and machine learning into this, but that basically getting to that new platform was kind of the goal in the first place, because that puts you on a clean, solid foundation as a customer with SAP to move forward. So I wanted to put that in kind of context for people, because they might not understand the full weight of what SAP was trying to do. As far as where we are and what those adoption life cycles, what we found from all of the companies that have done this before, the real key thing is that custom code. That's going to determine how badly or how well your implementation goes, is how much customization you had in the old world of SAP, how much of that needs to come to the new world, how much can you just leave in the old world and forget about and do it better in configuration. What are some of the new capabilities that you have in the new S4 out of the box that you didn't have in the old world that's going to change the way this team or that team engages with the system? And then there's this whole of what's the art of the possible. What can we do that we were never able to do in the old world? So when you start looking at that, the one thing that holds everybody back is, what's my legacy, that technical debt that I built up over the years in this old system with these Z programs and these Z reports? What do I got to take? What's going to break? What's not going to break? What do I still need? What can I retrain people on? That's really where the scope of the project for most people and the effort involved comes from, is figuring that out kind of at the beginning. And then after that, SAP's got a lot of very good tools and processes to make the rest of the technical side of it fairly straightforward. But really tackling that first big technical debt that you've built up is really the first hurdle for most companies.
It's interesting. I think it was back in 97, 98 when SAP came out with the ASAP methodology. And we were, the original IT services, we were doing a lot of implementations, R3 and ECC still. But then what occurred to me is that, these companies that were interested in using the ASAP methodology, they were more willing to use what SAP had out of the box. And so we put teams of 7 to 10 people together that would go out and get the tool up, implemented and running, and then they could do more or less, less on the custom code that you're talking about. And what I found is they were a lot happier than those that had spent all that time and all those millions of dollars in re-engineering everything they did in the custom code. That's an interesting way to look at it. Remember those times?
I had the pleasure and learning opportunity to work closely with Hasso a few times over the years, and I heard him say this more than a few times, that SC38 was SAP's original sin, right? Giving people the opportunity and the ability to write that custom code and change everything made sense at the time, and it was a necessary thing for SAP to grow, especially in the early days when they didn't have all the industry solutions and everything. But it's come back to bite a lot of people pretty badly in this situation. And that's the thing, is it's a one-time switch. You got to get rid of the old world and burn the boats and move to the new world. That's when a lot of this stuff starts to kick in, and a lot of the hidden value of S4 really starts to show itself up front for the users. And that's one thing I wanted to make kind of clear to your listeners, is that there really is a value proposition. There's a pot of ROI gold at the end of this rainbow once you get to the new world. But the effort to get there depends on how badly your system's been customized, how much you still might need those customizations going forward. And that limits a lot of your choices when it comes to doing that migration. I also wanted to point out that as much as it's a migration technically, SAP does have the tools and systems set up for that. And since they're going to a shared cloud model, they can put a lot more things into that, because they can kind of standardize a lot more since they've standardized the infrastructure. So it does take a few of the options away, which ends up being a good thing. But as much as it's a technical migration, it's also a contractual migration for customers. It's going from the old world of perpetually licensed software to the new world of capital, of operational expenses, cloud pricing and things like that. So it really is a business model shift for SAP too. And so there's a big change involved with that from a relationship standpoint with SAP, and a lot of benefits that can come with it. Like I said, now that SAP is in the keeping your customers happy every month business, right? It tends to change the way that they engage with customers and the support that they give them. So in just about every aspect, the new world of S4 really is better. It is a lot of work for some companies to get there, though, and that's kind of where we're seeing the laggards versus the early adopters in the adoption cycle for this. It really is kind of dependent upon how much customization, how many lines of code do they need to go through and review. SAP's got some really great tools for that, but at the end of the day, you need an expert to go in and say, can we kill this? Can we replicate it in custom code in the new world? Is this something that needs to survive? Can we use this as the opportunity for business process change to go digital transformation in the new world? Those are the types of questions you got to go through, and you need a couple of helping hands to talk through that, because it's business decisions. It's not really technical at that point.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things that you touched on that I want to ask a question about is change management is critical when you're doing this. We've seen so many environments, and we get brought into them, where you have C-level executives thinking one way, and you have certain lieutenants that are maybe not thinking exactly that way, and then you have the user community that's a little different. I'm sure you've seen from your past the challenges if there's not a good change management plan in place, isn't there? Haven't you?
That is, if you look at the scientific research, that's the number one reason why projects fail to achieve their ROI is poor change management. One of the things I heard very on in my SAP career, and it's gotten truer every day, was the problem's always sitting in front of the screen, right? If that user isn't comfortable and confident using that system to get their jobs done, and even if they're to the point of hating that system because they were never trained properly or never understood why they got to do it that weird way, you're never going to get the ROI that everybody was expecting. And so that's what I've been spending the last several years of my career is working on end user adoption. Like I said, I feel a little survivor's guilt having helped unleash this S4 thing into the world. But at the end of the day, that really is where the ROI is sitting. It's right in front of the screen. And S4 really does have enough interesting bells and whistles and simplifications and opportunities for the users to find things that they love, which is a weird thing to say about SAP, but that's the word they use. You start to see the light bulbs go off in their head once they're experienced with it. And so using the new SAP methodology for adoption for this, doing the upfront engagement with your key business users to make them understand why you're moving to S4. It's not just because it's a faster database. We got all these extra bells and whistles you're going to have. And the number one thing, and this is what really we found sells most of the business cases to the end users, is just showing them the new out-of-the-box standard SAP reports in Fiori that just come as part of the system that replace their ABAP reports, and showing them the real-time nature of it and the ability to just boom, do all these cool things in Excel right from the SAP system, do all these new things with all these capabilities in Fiori. That just lights them up. They're like, oh, wait a second, now I get it. And now I can have access to all that detailed information I want when I need to make that decision in the way that I want to see it, because that's the way my brain interprets things. That level of end user capability has never been there in the past in SAP, and it's something that really tends to, like I said, set off a lot of light bulbs. And when you have end users at the other end of this project pulling and asking for it and begging you, yeah, I want that. When can I get can I help? Can I test this thing out? That's the ideal situation for a successful SAP migration, is when you have those users at the other end of it that know why they're getting it, understand and see the value of it, and want to help the IT department deliver for them, right? That's the best of all scenarios you could ever hope for. And so that's where we see the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak. And the most rapid adoption is when you engage those users up front and kind of expose them to that new world that SAP has been able to innovate, and they'll help drag that project over the success finish line.
I agree. We also find that if you can have certain contingents of the organization that are on board and want to get a hold of the candy and have success with it quickly, yet you have, say, C-level executives that aren't strong enough sometimes to make sure everybody's on the same page. I had a customer that was struggling mightily with going through, some transformation, and I asked him, I said, what did you do to solve your problem? And he said, well, after 2 years, he said, I went in one day and I said, this is no longer democracy. This is what we're going to do. and that's really hard for a lot of executives to take.
Yeah, it is. We've seen that approach, and it's very effective. And the management by diktat. But what we've seen is, especially with S4, there's enough eye candy there that, and especially, and I want to stress this, for the finance team, there's enough new changes and new great stuff in finance that what we've found has been a critical success factor is get a handful of your super users in finance, key voices in that department, into a room for a day or two for what we call a discovery workshop, where we just walk them through that new world of, here's how you did that in the old world, here's how you do it in the new world. And they start to see the new way of doing things in S4 and how that changes. And they're like, oh, that's going to save me 5 hours a week. of this or that, right? Oh, I don't have to wait for Monday morning to run that report. I can run it whenever I want. Wait, really? Oh, wait, that changes my work schedule, right? I don't have to log in on Sunday night to hit enter and have it run to have it ready for me on Monday morning. Stuff like that. Little things like that are what pop up. And what we find is the biggest benefit of that is during these discovery sessions that we do, the end users are telling the IT department all their favorite things about what they want in the new system. And they're also highlighting the areas where they would like to digitally transform. Rather than the IT department forcing it on them saying, you have to change this, it's, oh, we get to change that because the old way kind of sucked. And if we can do it this new, faster, cheaper, easier way, that'd be really amazing. So you end up capturing a lot of really great instantaneous alignment opportunities between the IT department and especially, like I said, the finance and accounting teams, because they'll feel that change the most the first. And then they can help take that project across the finish line. That we've seen that kind of success, all those ingredients together.
Sort of like they're little profits for you.
Well, that and you know, the finance team has the final say on the budget, so always make them happy first, right?
That's right. That's right. I have another question about what we're seeing today, Jeff. Is there's still a lot of customers that are still on ECC, and we know that SAP is said that I believe it's in 27 that they're going to stop supporting, and there's a lot of apprehension. We talk to them consistently that they're very concerned and apprehensive about going to the public cloud. What is your thoughts and / advice to anyone that's in that experiencing that dilemma right now?
Well, like I said, let me try and put it in context of where we are in the adoption cycle. So if you look at adoption cycles as a bell curve, when SAP first came out with S4, there was a line of people, tens deep, not hundreds or thousands deep, of early adopters said, I want to get that. That's what I need. And there was a CIO that was going to put their, job and career on the line to make that a thing, right? And so that was kind of all the early success stories you hear about. Now we've moved more into the mainstream. So we're just about halfway through the total number of R3 customers have migrated to S4. So we're halfway to SAP's goal. Unfortunately, there's only about 2 years left before SAP, and I want to say they're ending mainstream support and the proper terminology. That doesn't mean that they're going to yank the plug out of your S4 or your R3 system or your ERP system, your old 4.6 or whatever, 4.7. They're not going to do that. What they are going to do is they're going to start jacking up the prices of support until it gets very painful for people to keep doing that. And there will always be laggards at the very end of the line that go up for years and years and years. There are still companies running R2 on this planet. For real. It's not even a joke. So there will be always that small percentage at the end. But what we are is we're in the middle of the mainstream. And so we're past the point of any of those objections being reasonable, I guess. They're not unreasonable, but they're not reasonable objections. Why do I need to go to the cloud? Or I don't want my GL in the cloud, or what I don't trust. No, we're past that. There's too many thousands of massive companies that have done it. SAP's figured it out. The partners, all the big infrastructure guys have figured out how to run SAP at scale. So we're past the point of excuses like that. What we're to the point of now is in that remaining 50%, it's a business value versus technical need discussion. And the technical need is winning now. We have to do it. We're running out of time. And it's not necessarily because they're running out of time with SAP. It's you're getting less and less, basically you're getting more and more companies now that have to move in a shorter amount of time. And there's only so many consulting companies and bodies out there to help you do it, right? Everybody needs a little bit of help. Some need a lot of help. Some need a few experts. Some need a lot of experts. Again, that goes back to how messed up is your system today and how messed up do you want it to be when you move. The the point is there's really is a crunch out there for talent. A lot of gray-haired old people that I started with are retiring out of the business, and there's not as many young people jumping into it. So there is a crunch for talent right now to help with those, and it's going to get worse and worse as we get closer to that end date from SAP. And so that is more the challenge now is how can I get this done with the resources I can lock down, and where's my window to get that done? And here's how much work I need to get done on it. So if you're behind the 8 ball, it's okay. You're still going to be able to get there, but we're past the point of no return with SAP now, and we're getting into that last final stretch of craziness. And gray-haired old folks like us that have seen a few of these cycles before know what the end of that cycle is like. It's really chaotic, and so this is something that you want to get ahead of if you can. And now is about the best time you could start.
So, do you think? And I agree with you, Jeff. Do you think that people should, those that have some apprehension? Part of it is just the magnitude of the effort in their world. They're just, and business may not be great or whatever, and they're struggling with that, but concern about security in the cloud. What do you say specifically to that?
So there, first of all, security in the cloud with SAP. Let's section that off. First of all, SAP, when they do partner with the Amazons and the Googles and the Microsofts and everybody else's, and even on their own SAP, hosted systems for their cloud, it's a double-edged sword is the way that they approach it. There's within the security systems of SAP and inside their walled garden, and then there's the bigger platform security. There's the OS security and all the other things like that. So it really is this massive complex thing out there. What they've been able to figure out is a wrapper around that. That makes it easy for customers to understand where the security hardened points are, where their weak points as the customer is, and 99% of the time, it's going to be an internal issue with SAP, someone that had access to something they shouldn't have, doing something they shouldn't be doing, whether it's the real person or hack credentials for that real person. That's typically what you see as most security incidents with SAP. The ones from the outside, like I said, there's a lot of different things, but SAP's figured that out. Like I said, we're past the point of adoption in this cycle of those being any showstoppers for anybody. When you've got the CIA running on these systems, when you've got governments running on these systems, they're good enough for your average SAP customer. That doesn't mean that you don't investigate it, but SAP and their partners have a very good story to tell on that. And I don't see that now being a showstopper for anybody. Just like the old arguments of I don't want my GL out on the cloud, or yeah, we've gotten past that. It's not that they're not legitimate arguments or weren't. It's just there's good enough answers for that, and that's the type of stuff that you go through as part of the as this kind of more formula-based SAP adoption process for S4. There's a lot of security steps in that before, during, and after that tend to assuage most issues people have with that topic.
Sure. Thank you for that. I appreciate that perspective. Last question, Jeff. What do you see coming with the SAP ecosystem? What's your thoughts over the next few years, and what's reason for folks to be excited?
Like I said, again, if you kind of go back in history, once SAP gets most of their customers onto a standardized cloud-based single version of SAP, right? That was literally a fever dream of ours that we could ever get to this on this virtualized infrastructure out in the cloud somewhere. Once SAP gets people there, that's when they can really start delivering a lot of innovations that were impossible before. Right? It's one thing to say SAP is building AI for, invoice verification or something like that, right? And it's one thing to say that they have that. In the old days, though, customers would have to adopt it one by one by one by one. Now SAP can just put that in there, and customers just click a box. Do I want this turned on, or do I want it turned off? That level of capability to improve the system in these massive chunks, right? Eliminating multiple hours of work for those users just by embedding these improvements without having to have every company go through an upgrade to be able to take advantage of it. That's why I say this is one big lift and shift to get things to the cloud, to get to this clean core, and to be able to adopt things on this platform approach from SAP and a cloud-based platform. That really opens up the floodgates for innovations. And so if you look at where SAP is investing their engineering resources now, they've kind of reduced a lot of the core S4 development teams now and spread them out into more agile innovation teams by function and industry. So you see a lot more, corporate function-based things. We're going to improve this problem that has always existed in, inventory management, and this problem that's always been here in warehouse, whatever. And then you're going to see, explosions of innovations in industries. And that's where you'll see a lot of partner work as well as on the industry side of things. A lot of SAP co-innovations at the edge with industry partners.
Fantastic. Well, Jeff, one last thing. Thank you so much for joining us today. And there's one thing I know, I didn't give you a heads up on this, but I know that you're an author and I know you've written books. Is there anything you'd like to promote if anyone's watching that you'd like to promote to them?
Oh, well, like I said, most of my books are on S4, basic stuff for end users. We've got one advanced book on configuration. If anybody wants to, learn how to be an SAP consultant, that'll help you out along the way. And then we got a great book on analytics that really covers the entire concepts all across the portfolio of SAP Analytics Cloud. But it's more from an academic standpoint. So as much as I'd like to pimp my books, really just hope people start learning about their S4 journey. Like I said, as I feel kind of responsible as one of the lunatics that came up with this idea way back in the day, that companies get the value we always hoped that they would when we finally delivered it. And so the value is there, and start your learning journey now for that one. It pays off in the end.
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed listening to Jeff. He truly has been involved with SAP from a long time ago, and as you've heard him say a couple of times, very humbly, he was a part of the original design of the S4 process, the S4 platform. So, thank you very much, Jeff, for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate it. And so long for now.
Thanks a lot. Happy to come.